Welcome to Deal Flow Live. I'm one of your hosts, Brody Vinson.
And I'm Ryan Santo.
And this is a show where we talk about buying and selling businesses. In this show, we review listings for businesses that are currently for sale online. And we talk about whether we feel like they're priced appropriately, what kinds of things you should look for, ask about, and be concerned about as part of the deal. And ultimately, whether or not it is a good deal and what type of person it would be a good deal for. Ryan, what are we covering today?
Today we're looking at some businesses that involve real estate, and fairly heavily too. One of the things that we always talk about on here is the complications that real estate can involve a transaction with a business, meaning we actively avoid anything that says real estate included. And, well, not to say we avoid it, but we'll always ask if that can be carved out, taken off the price, because we just want the business itself. So we got two very interesting examples here that are very much tied to the real estate it's on. And here's our first one. Now, this one I was looking up warehouses for sale, and maybe one day I'll talk about why. But this one I stumbled upon, and it had
That
the very...
wasn't a sus comment at all.
No, I mean, who doesn't want a warehouse to play pickleball in? This one was interesting because I saw it, and I saw that it was, beautiful looking facility, had some stuff on it, 25 spaces. I'm like, great. Good for an indoor sports arena or small sports like industrial complex, especially in an up-and-coming area like Narcoossee, like Nona, an indoor pickleball field. Forget it. They'll be there all day. But I noticed there was something called business expenses included, or business included, something along the lines of business included. So I clicked through some of the images. And where was it? Where was that exact wording?
This is the other listing.
Oh, okay.
That's the other listing you were talking about.
Okay, so...
Can we go to that one?
Well, no, we can stay on this one. Yeah.
Here we go.
Oh, that one. Yeah. So this one was... Well, we'll do this one then. So this one said business value included, and this is involving real estate. Why? It's a venue. It is specifically positioned as a wedding venue. It's a very interesting situation because this one has a lot of land, and it also has a very beautiful setup. I mean, this is a very high-end setup they got here with a house that someone could live in. So theoretically, you buy this business, you've also bought yourself a house and land. But as we all know, the wedding venue industry as a whole is very temperamental and very, very cautious. But this is one where I found that I was like, how could I drive that price down, especially with it having so many benefits? And my first thought was, talk to the owner and say, hey, look, what if I rented the land from you? Or what if I just rented the land that I'm using and you could take your other land and you can maybe parcel it, sell it? How do I drive this thing down to make my bottom line worth it? Because to get people, having known some people who do events, your money is in people paying for your packages, like the ones that you provide, because you're vendors. When they start bringing in their own people, you're losing money on the transaction. So that's one of the issues that you have. So that's why you'd want to carve out a venue like this so heavily. And I'm sure they're pricing that house very, very high, very well above what its actual net, but they're lumping it into it as one. So what are your thoughts, Brody?
My thoughts on this kind of concept in general is if they're trying to sell the real estate and the business together with something like this, you have to look at it as a business deal individually, but also think about your situation. Now, this one's interesting because of the house involved. If you're someone who is looking for a house and a business all together, then this actually might make a lot of sense. And it's very interesting because you could potentially really leverage something like an SBA financing loan to, in this case, kind of get yourself a house too, which makes this very, very intriguing for the right person in the right situation. When it says business value included here, I would need to know a little bit more about the business. It doesn't actually list much information about how much money the business is making on here. So it says that the property has a total assessment of $576,000. I would guess that's just the land itself. I would want to know what the house is assessed at versus the business itself, because it's not really breaking things down at all. And so if the business is making cash flow that justifies that ask, then it's one thing. But one thing that we find a lot is that when they do package them together, a lot of times it's not quite that simple. It's like they're inflating the value of the business or of the real estate because both come together. And in reality, you probably couldn't resell it for that much if you were sold them together. So I think the important thing here is that you get a valuation of the business and of the real estate as separate entities and look at whether the asking price that they have actually reflects the two of those things combined. But again, if you're looking to live where you work and own something like this is an interesting proposition with the house being attached.
Right. I saw this and I was like, what a unique sale proposal from this place.
It's beautiful too.
Yeah. I'm sure the house is probably clocking in 6, 7 based on, in Florida. We're in Florida. So Florida trends, a house like this, probably clocking 6, 7 easy because I think it's, the massive kitchen, all the new appliances, the pool, all that. But it's going to be, to Brody's point, there's some digging to be done in the financials of the business side of this. If they're leaning heavily on the real estate part of it, there may or may not be something up. Also, an interesting tidbit I found is that you could also possibly do what the current owner is doing and have tenants in the house, which I found out from some asking around they do. And that's part of the deal. Do you want to also either A, have people evicted, or B, have renters on your business property? So there's a lot of layers to this one, and I've never quite seen something like it. And it was so interesting to me. I thought, I wonder what Brody thinks about this. So I'm glad we brought it on today.
Now, I would say my personal opinion, if a lot of people that watch this show are simply just looking to buy a business to create good cash flow for themselves, if you're in that position, and especially if this is a first business to buy, this is not necessarily one I would recommend. If I was buying a business for the first time, I would probably try to buy one without real estate, just because you're going to end up having to pay so much compared to what the business is making because of that real estate, and it just isn't really necessarily in the best alignment with the goal of just maximizing the value of the purchase and paying back the loan and so forth. But as a very long-term play, if you've got a lot of capital set aside, or if this is maybe a fun purchase of a business or something, this is where I think something like this could be interesting. What about you? What do you think?
I think it's like you said, it's very multifaceted, and there's a lot of different angles rather than what we traditionally look at, which are usually very cut and dry. I'm all with you on the real estate. There's only certain situations where you'd want to buy real estate, and I think for the majority of what we do, it's about cash flow in a most precise and optimized manner. If you were, like you said, if you had a couple million on the side and you had your dream of running a venue, this is it. But I think when you think about just the fact of how much insurance is on the house, insurance alone, you've already driven up your cost. Not to mention, all the taxes that come with real estate and business tax. You've added more taxes and insurance to your life than you ever needed. More so than just a regular business. So I think this one is for somebody with deep pockets or an existing business that's expanding, or somebody who really wants a house down here and has had trouble finding one.
Yeah, or if your return on your money is not your primary concern and it's more of a lifestyle move, something where maybe what I would say is the perfect play for. I think this is a great retirement play. I could see a nice retired couple wanting to move out into the country where it's mostly peaceful all the time, but they also have people around getting married. I think for maybe a retired couple that just wants to supplement their income a little bit and have some money coming in through the wedding venue rental, I think this would actually be perfect because you get a little bit of seclusion in the house, but you can also be as involved as you want to be. A lot of people get very bored in their retirement. That's what I think this really appeals to.
I agree. I didn't even think about that. That's a great way to think about it. Yeah.
I personally, that sounds like a great retirement to me. Like if you just wanted to do something that kept you a little bit engaged and interested and running something, having some involvement in something without having a business that's too demanding. You'd probably have people running the actual weddings for you, kind of handling all the details there. But owning it and living on the land. You know, it's beautiful land, plenty of room, a little bit secluded. I think that'd be really interesting.
Yeah, I think that's the optimal play. You're getting your second job on your retirement, and this is just that nice low key, like a very happy industry where it's just weddings and people having love and all that.
Yeah, you're just getting to see people on their best day ever.
That's a great one. Yeah. Hey,
I'd say either this or the oyster farm that we looked at.
oh, the
Both
Oyster
great
Farm,
retirement plays.
great retirement place. He was working like 2 days a week, making $40K a year. Talk about like great.
Mm-hmm. How about this one?
This one was interesting because this one was listed purely as real estate. Because again, Ryan's pickleball court's coming at some point. And I was looking through it, and I was like, okay, let me check out the pictures. Like, okay, the weird fenced-in backyard, like nice, beautiful, well-maintained property, fenced. I'm like, okay, great, nice dumpster section. Right near the main strip, all this other stuff, and a couple other businesses. So it's got some good traffic flow. And then we got to this part, and I was a little shocked because I'm like, that's a business. That's a full-on business I'm looking at with plans and everything.
Wow.
And,
okay. This clearly used to be some kind of dog training, dog care facility.
I looked them up. I kind of did some digging. They used to be a daycare boarding training, like not training, but they had daycare boarding party. Like they did a lot of stuff, which, judging by the look of the facility, they did it very high end. It looks like, based on what I could find online, that they got to a point where they weren't cash flowing easily. And I guess this is their way of, they're probably just selling the land as is, or the
That
real
is an
estate.
expensive build out for what
A
they're
dog
doing.
school, yeah. You can do this, but you need to make your prices work, and you need to also be. This is very This is crazy high end for something that does not need to be.
I agree. If I had to speculate as to why this business is no longer in operation, if this was the first owner, they probably way overspent on the build out and weren't able to recover their money. I mean, you see that a lot with restaurants. I wouldn't have expected to see that with this kind of thing, but you never know what the situation was. Maybe this was someone that came into a lot of money of some kind for some reason, and they hadn't really built a business before, didn't really know how to do it the lean way. I mean, it's an incredible looking facility. It looks amazing on the inside, but for what this is, I doubt you're going to recover your money in any reasonable amount of time.
Especially you're trying to sell this for $2.85 million. That's somebody coming in who may not want to pay, $2.85 million for a dog school, like a dog play care place. They may want to do something else with a space this big. They have to gut it now.
It makes it a very specific requirement for what it has to be purchased for, or there's a lot of costs in redoing it. It's a very good point. Now, for someone who is going to make this kind of business again, you'd probably get a pretty good deal on this. You could probably negotiate the price down because they're probably trying to get rid of it now that the business isn't running. I bet you could negotiate the price down and end up really skipping some of those expensive build-out costs and getting something really unique and awesome. We were talking before this off air about how there's this kind of like known thing in the restaurant world where whoever does the initial build-out of the restaurant, they're probably not going to make their money back, and they're probably going to fail out of business. A lot of times the second owner doesn't quite get to profitability, but on average they say that the third owner of a restaurant is the one that really gets to benefit from that whole thing because it's been around for a little while. The location's established, a nice build out has been done, some reputation and some knowing on the street has happened where people recognize it and know what's there, but you have a chance to kind of start from anew, get it a little bit cheaper, get it on the ground floor because someone needed to just recoup their losses, and then you can take it to profitability. And as rough as that is for the first and second person, someone who's just trying to play things smart and not be too risky, that's good information to know and understand with something like this. If you're trying to buy or start a business that does involve real estate, could be to your benefit to go for something like this that's already had a lot of the hard work and money spent building it out and is ready for you to start, and you could probably get for cheaper than it costed to build it out.
And what did you say, Brody? You made a very good point before we started this thing. I believe was it assets are not a business? Was it something along those lines?
Yeah. So you were describing this as a business, and it, for all intents and purposes, this does look like a business, but a business is cash flow. A business is profitability. A business is motion. And if if it's just been sitting there and hasn't been making money, you're not just going to walk in one day and customers start coming in. There's no recognition. There's no momentum to it. There's probably no ads being run or any social media happening. You would have to start that stuff from scratch and learn how to do it. And you would have some headwinds working for you. Maybe you could recover the old pages that they used to use. Maybe they have some Google reviews. I think you shared with me that you found out that they did. So some things would be working in your favor, but you can't realistically pay money for the business itself because there's no business if nothing's happening.
And this is an ad. This is I think a good point to be made that how I found this one. This is a real estate sale with assets on the estate. This is no different than saying, okay, well, the house's price includes the updated kitchen hardware.
Exactly.
This is what they're trying to push, which, like you said, they could drastically reduce the price on this thing based on how long it's been sitting and how niche this is. I mean, incredibly niche. And, the area is good. I think it's something like to be said that there's certain industries that people can really get overzealous on, and I think it's restaurants. I think it's pets. I think to a certain extent,
people are emotional about their pets, about their food.
But I think when it comes, definitely. I think it's also about people's thought about how it'll work. I'll make the most beautifulest pet thing. I'll charge a decent price, and everything will be sunshines and rainbows. And if you do not have that experience working in the industry or having people who are going to come in, like the power of bringing in people who know that industry or have worked in that industry. I mean, Brody, you talk to people all the time who are running these businesses, and when we talk to people, and specifically when you've made your most recent, I think a recent deal, you didn't just say, I'm going to run this company now. You said, hey, I'm going to do this. I want you guys to stay on and help me run this thing with you. I'm going to help do this, but I need your expertise. You didn't just say, I know what you're doing. I got it. I read the manual. That's important, especially when buying a business, is making that connection with the owner. And that's why we always say, if they'll stay on for a price, find the price.
Yeah.
There's nothing worse than buying something and watching it nosedive.
And in most cases, the price can just be keeping equity. So we're talking to a business owner right now who has a restoration business, really cool business, very, very profitable. I didn't ever quite realize how profitable these businesses are, but these are like your fire restoration, water restoration, mold restoration, things like that. And a lot of times there's much less labor involved because you come and set up a machine. For example, the water would be for something like flooding when they bring those big like air drying machines. Mm-hmm. It's much less labor involved because they just bring the machine. It's an incredibly expensive machine. I forget, it's like $20,000, $30,000, something like that. I might have that off, but very expensive machines. But when you have them already, you just go and set them down and let them run for a few days, and there's no labor involved except for bringing them out and collecting them. Now, so you can make insane margins with them. Anyway, I digress. We're talking to this business owner, and we're talking about making him part of our whole private equity plan. And in most cases, you imagine that the business owner, when they sell their business, are just going to kind of sell it, it changes hands, and they're gone the next day or after a little bit of training. In this case, we're actually talking to him about staying on indefinitely with 10, 20% of the business still, most likely 20%. And in his case, he really just wanted someone to help him with it. He was thinking about selling it because he had a health scare, and that health scare led him to believe that the business wasn't a sustainable thing for him. But as we got to talking, we realized that there was just parts of the business and the stress that came with it that he needed to not have on his plate anymore. And that if he was to sell most of it and put most of that responsibility on someone else, that would do it for him.
I think that's a perfect point to what this was. I think if this person with this business had that, and most importantly, if they'd listened and taken it seriously, we probably wouldn't be seeing this listing. And I think that's the great fall of a lot of these businesses that we see, are the great kind of thing. But to that point, you're sitting here in real time in 2024, the year of our Lord, and you're saying there are people out there. That's our timer, so I'm going to wrap this up real quick. There's real people who have real businesses who are saying, hey, if you can take over the stressful part, I'll help you keep it going, and I'll also let you have the majority. That's real. That happened. That's not just somebody telling us that. That's a real thing that's happening to you for the second time.
And it's not let you have it. We're talking, to be clear, we're talking about buying the 80% for a fair market price. But the great thing about that is, my business partner calls it schmuck insurance. Very crude way of saying it. But all he means is that, you're keeping a little bit of insurance that the business is a decent business, and that they're not just handing you off something that's going to lose money and it's going to fall apart. So you're keeping them on board to make sure that things go well and go smoothly. But I would add to that you're keeping them on to make sure that you can meet the customers and that there's a smooth transition there, and that it doesn't just fall apart because of some secret sauce that they had or thing that hasn't been documented, which in many cases there's a lot of that in these small businesses. So it's really good to keep them on as a buyer because of that. I would also say, as someone who's selling a business, I think this is an important perspective too. If you were, and I actually, the first client I ever worked with in this sense ended up selling his business this way. He was thinking about selling the business. He wanted to maximize the value of it. He ended up selling 70% of the business, keeping 30%. He stayed on as the operator, but the guy that bought his business is slowly building him out at the same time. So that 30% is increasing in value as they bring on new clients and grow the business because the buyer is more experienced as an entrepreneur than him. But also, so the 30% is increasing a lot in value, but also he's got this plan to build him out that he wouldn't have been able to do on his own. He just didn't know how to do that. And because of that, one day he's going to have a second exit where he's probably going to get more money than he got for his 70% for the remaining 30%. And in many cases, there's a potential to do that as someone who's selling your business. So if it's your first business, or if it's one that you're just not that experienced in, if you're hitting some kind of hurdle and growing it, you might be able to maximize your sale by bringing on a more experienced partner. This is why people sell a small portion of their business to people on Shark Tank. That's exactly what it is. They believe that by selling part of their business, they can increase it and make it worth more. And in many cases, that's the case for small businesses too.
It's great. It's you're basically giving them you're basically giving them twice the payout they would have gotten, and also, making it easier on them and keeping them in a paycheck too, to a certain extent. So that's there's a way. I think a lot of times people understand how much of a service it can be to buy somebody, help them buy a business from them, and also keep them on. Like there's a lot of good to be done in this space. So I think a lot of people forget that, and that's one of the reasons that we do this. Not a lot of businesses should go under. There's a lot of life left in them. So
that's what we're in this for. And then there's a lot of businesses that are doing well but have hit some kind of plateau. I personally have never had much success at operating a business all by myself. Other people have. That's not to say that can't be the case for anyone, but I personally have always had the most success when I've had business partners that help to cover my weaknesses with their strengths. And so many times there's these solo business operators that have had a certain success but don't have the qualities, connections, resources, network, whatever it might be, to grow their business to the level they'd like to. And so selling could be a good way to achieve that. And that's really what we're looking for. We're looking for business owners who are in that position that want to grow.
It's great stuff. I think we got a lot of cool stuff coming up, and I think we'll do some more interesting episodes like this. I like these.
This was a unique one. I like it. It's interesting for us to be able to give our opinion on real estate, because I think so many people just assume that you have to have the real estate with the business purchase, or that you can't find a business with real estate involved without, buying an entire established thing. And there's unique ways around that, as we can see here, where you can buy something established that's just maybe out of business that has a build out done and get it revamped for your own. There's a lot of different unique angles here.
There's a lot of unique ways to go about it, but I'm glad we got to do an episode like this. And I'd like to do maybe another episode at some point where we say, okay, we're the business owner. How do we make our money back on this? How do we recover from this loss? That might be a cool episode to do at some point.
I think that would be cool too. We'd have to kind of work our way back from the purchase price and talk about what the debt service might look like, and then how we would go about achieving that level of profitability. What would the pricing look like? How many customers do we need to have?
Let's get a little technical with it at some point.
Let's do it.
I love it.
Well, this has been Deal Flow Live. Thanks for tuning in. Tune in every Tuesday night at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for more episodes where we cover things just like this. We talk about buying and selling businesses. We also talk about what we're doing personally and how all of this relates, what we've learned during the course of our journey. I've been one of your hosts, Brody Vinson.
I've been Ryan Santo. And Brody, where can they find you again?
They can find me on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, all the different social media channels. And Ryan, what is the best and single only place to find you?
At this point in time, I'm on LinkedIn. Ryan Santo, just shoot me a message when you connect, and might be moving to Instagram soon because Brody's been telling me I should, so I'm probably going to listen.
For now, he's very focused, though, and he checks his LinkedIn messages. I check mine. Message us there. Any questions that you have, any businesses you'd like us to cover, whether it be something involving real estate, whether it be a specific niche of some kind, something that we've covered in the past that we haven't covered. We would love to see specific listings that you want us to cover, or even just industries. And until next